Tuning into the online broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans, producing after-shows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Happy Easter, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to another after show for Madam Secretary. It is Season 1, Episode 19, Spartan Figures. Yes. So before we get into it, please go follow us on AFTERBUZZ TV on Twitter. What are the other social media?
Facebook,
Instagram,
YouTube, everything.
SoundCloud, iTunes. Go find us, rate, review the show. We love coming at you every week with an after show. And I'm Sterling Cates, and you can find me on Twitter at Sterling Cates.
Hey y'all, I'm April Whisenhant. You can find me on Twitter at April Whisenhant.
All right, well, let's get on into this little Easter episode.
Yeah.
So we start off on the farm, which is where we first met Elizabeth and Henry before she was offered the job.
It's beautiful there.
Yeah, so they have this property that's their second home, but they talk about it as it's their real home. They like being out there. They have the horses and lots of land, and they don't have to worry about, you know, all the security. And she said, this is our normal.
Right.
At the farm.
And they're trying to decide if they're going to move back there, or they want to move back there, or if they should sell it right now, just because their life is in such a different place. But it's so gorgeous, I kind of don't want them to sell it.
Yeah, well, and they don't know how long she'll be, her job will last.
Right.
But I mean, I think there'll be years and years, you know, at least in the as Secretary of State. So, but it's hard for them to know where exactly they'll be in a few years and whether or not it makes sense financially for them to keep the farm or to sell it.
Exactly.
But they seem so calm and like stress-free out there. You kind of want them to keep it.
I know, that's kind of why I would want them to, just because it's a complete getaway for their entire life, and you know, they have no cell reception and people can't really get in touch with them there, which obviously, while she is in the position that she's in right now, yes, it's important to have cell reception, but it's just like they're almost a different couple, and I really like seeing that side of them.
I was just about to say, how cute were Henry and Elizabeth this episode?
She was like flirting with him.
I know, and even when he was doing just like little small stuff around the house, you know, they were very flirty, and it was very cute, and of course we love them, and we talk about that every week.
Right.
How we, you know, relationship goals. But so yeah, to see them in that setting without all of the distractions of DC was really cute. And it just is also that balance that she has with work and her relationships with Henry and her family and her kids. And so she really does have a lot going on.
Yeah.
But then so Blake and Nadine come and crash the party. They couldn't get in touch with her all morning because, like you said, the cell reception is so terrible. But they come to bring her news that there was an agreement made in Brussels to solve the Greek debt crisis, which is what the main chunk of this episode is about. Is about this Greek debt crisis that's going on, and how there's deals going on, or trying to figure out a deal to solve it, and hopefully not downward spiral into an economic crisis for the whole world.
Well, apparently Greece has really just kind of screwed some stuff up in this episode, but you know, not that every country at some point hasn't on their own, of course, but basically they want to, if this debt deal doesn't go through, then like you said, it'll be a huge economic collapse, and obviously that's not good for anyone. So all of the, you know, kind of big nations are gathering together and brokering this deal, but it looks like somebody's trying to mess it up.
Yeah, so there's two ways to go about this. Like, there's, you know, the perspective where people want to hold Greece reliable for borrowing all of this money, for doing all of, you know, whatever it is that got them in this position, but to hold them accountable for those actions. And then there's the other side of it where countries are like, you know what, we just need to figure this out. We'll make a deal because if Greece goes down, then we're all going to go down with them. So there's this hedge fund guy who is obviously
Max Quinn, I think is his name.
Max Quinn, yes, who is obviously very concerned about the money. They said Greece has owed him $1.3 billion for the last 10 years.
Oh my gosh, I'd be kind of pissed if someone owed me $1.3 billion.
Right.
Too.
So obviously he wants that money.
Right.
But not only does he want the money, but it's the principle of the thing. You know, that he's not going to just let the 1.3 billion
go
without a fight. So there's a meeting with President Elizabeth, Russell, and Max Quinn.
Right.
And basically Max Quinn is just saying, you know, we need to get tough on Greece. We can't just let them off the hook with this.
Right.
So he's really the only person who's resisting signing this deal. And but basically the president's like, you know what, we have to sign this deal. We can't let Greece just tumble down.
And this was that meeting with them. It was kind of, I forget the word that he used, but basically it was, you know, kind of oh, hey, just to let you know. It wasn't like a set meeting that the president had to do. It was a courtesy meeting, basically. And
he was
this
like, when are we ever going to be done with these courtesy meetings?
Right. And this guy, Max Quinn, is kind of trying to strong arm him and be like, no, we can't, like, let's fix this deal because, you know, the confidence that we have in you isn't great right now. You know, you need to strong arm them and do whatever. But the president and everyone else, Madam Secretary and Russell included, both think that this deal is really good for him. And because he was kind of the leader of making it all happen and from saving us from economic collapse.
Right.
But I mean, so they want him to, you know, kind of do this as a victory thing. And so say, go to Brussels to this meeting where everything's going to be signed and everything because of all of the stuff that's going on. But I thought that was kind of, you know, as you know, even though he was a former member of the government, what was Max Quinn?
So he was the former treasurer,
okay,
is what they said. And
under
so
Dalton,
he does, but so he does have some pull there.
Right.
He was assigned under Dalton to do that job.
But I feel like he was just almost kind of like bullying him a little bit, saying like, oh, well, you know, our confidence isn't that strong in you right now, and so you need to fix this for us. But the president's right, he can't please every single person all the time.
Right.
So, and he gets that.
Yeah, and so I'm glad you brought that up because that was one of another theme this show is there was a lot of tension in regards to the president and his reputation and how, you know, how good of a president he actually is, especially after all of this. People are finding out that there were some, you know, the coup was going on.
Right.
And
it's like under him, the CIA and all this stuff.
At the end of the day, he's responsible for all of that. And it really did damage his reputation on an international level and within our own government.
And we kind of talked about that either last week or the week before. I think it was the episode that Bess did the Face the Nation interview. Yeah. Because she said that, it was that it all happened and that it all, or got handled, I should say, the whole coup situation because of President Dalton and because of his leadership.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back on that to prove that honestly everything, like this coup that he had nothing to do with.
Or didn't, we don't know.
Well, exactly. Maybe he did.
We don't think he did. Yeah.
Right. But he, all of this ultimately does come back on him, even though it's Bess that kind of really handled the situation and that really got behind it and was the person that went there and handled it in Iran. But everything really does come back on him because it's not them saying, oh, Bess, this happened under you too. You were a former member of the CIA. It's, I don't know, he's kind of got to get some zhuzh back up.
Well, like she said in this episode, though, is that she's in the position she is in because of him.
Right.
And it sounded like she wouldn't even want to be there if he wasn't there.
Right.
And you can definitely tell, and especially, we'll talk about this in a second when they kind of crash that meeting. Yeah. But you can tell that she really does look up to him as a leader. Mm-hmm. And even though she's doing a lot of the muscle work, behind the scenes stuff, he's isn't really like stepping up until this point with how she thinks he could be performing as president. And we'll find out later, and we'll talk about this in a second. Yeah. So going back to Max Quinn, let's just finish up with him. So he decides that he's going to take matters into his own hand.
Creatively, might I add.
Yes. And he repossesses statues that the Greek government had loaned to the U.S. government to display as, people can go and pay to see them. And they're the Spartan figures of democracy. So not only are they're basically priceless because they're worth a lot of money, but at the same time it's like Jay said, they're kind of like the Declaration of Independence, a kind of thing where it's just a piece of paper, but the value there is huge. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so he basically gets a court order, which he pulls some strings somehow. We never really find out how, but
I think he called the current treasurer or something like that.
Yeah, because he used to be the treasurer, so he definitely still has those strings and was able to get a court order to repossess the statues.
Seems a little easy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I mean, I get how it happened and it was totally legal, but he kind of shows up as these figures are being shipped off and he's like, oh, just call me the repo man. And I'm like, wait, how is this happening?
And it was just really easy for him to take them in general.
Yeah.
But I mean, and even Elizabeth was like, wait, how did he even do that? And he basically just needed to make one phone call. But I agree. I don't think it should be that easy to take something that's as valuable as, say, the Declaration of Independence or whatever.
He's saying, he's like, I mean, they owe me all of this money, so this is basically going to be my payment. They don't pay me, so I'm going to take these Spartan figures of democracy.
Right. And it's not like he was even intending to sell them or anything. It was really just the principle of it.
Right.
So, yeah.
He wants that strong arm, and it's his way of doing it.
It's just like a typical, like, I feel just like...
Typical hedge fund guy.
Hedge fund guy, yeah.
I want my money.
Yeah, exactly. So, so this economic summit, though, that is supposed to be a victory lap for President Dalton. I call him President Conrad. I was like, that's his first name. But Nadine is saying that also that they get a little crazy because they're like just a social party because the deal's already done before the the summit actually is. So everyone that goes there just socializes and I guess they party a lot. And you see that the staff is really excited about that aspect of it, and not so much the serious stuff.
They need to relax sometimes, but it stresses Nadine out.
Well, Nadine is like super stressed out about it. She wants them to behave. She's definitely the mom of the group. But yeah, so, and we find out that Russell isn't going. He's going to stay back to do some talk show appearances, but we really see that he kind of uses that time to swoop in to talk to Henry, which we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, so we have Max still not signing this debt deal, and he has the Spartan figures under his possession.
Where is he keeping these?
Yeah, I'm not really sure where those are, but that also obviously upsets Greece because they've loaned us this, you know, national treasure. And it was just so easy for this one guy to sweep in and repossess them. So they obviously that broke their trust. And they decided that they're going to call off the deal unless they get their statues back, and which seems a little crazy.
I love how I love how Bess learns about this though. She's watching TV as she's packing for Brussels to go on this trip, and you see the Prime Minister Giorgio, I think was his name, of Greece, come on TV and say like, no, this is bad. We are not brokering the deal unless this. I'm like, I feel like there should be a more formal way to tell us, like, hey, we're breaking this huge deal that's gonna save the economy. But no,
because of these statues, which is crazy that they're jeopardizing being financially okay. At least they definitely would still have some work to do after the deal was made, but they're jeopardizing that in order to get the statues for national pride reasons.
And we see that, I mean, this happens a little later in the episode once they're actually in Brussels, but once the president and Bess are meeting with the prime minister, he says, you know, a lot of, I'm doing this for my people, you know, clearly what we've been through, they're in a national debt crisis. They don't have a lot of confidence in us, he said, you know, and that's another kind of way he poked at the president. He's like, you know what it's like, basically your country not having confidence in you.
Well, and the president's been under a lot of scrutiny, and obviously Greece is currently going under that as well, but for different reasons, obviously. But if they default this deal, then the global economy will collapse, and that's you know, I mean, that's not something small that they're talking about. So basically, it's up to Elizabeth to figure out a new deal and fast. And so the whole team is working on this. You know, they're trying to dig up dirt on Max. Like, did he repossess these statues legally? What's he hiding? Because he's got to be hiding something. They always are. Yeah, so he's trying to. They're trying to figure out what they can use on Max as leverage to get the statues back. And while they're doing that, Daisy brings up the fact that she had to get her tickets to go see these statues like a year in advance, and they obviously paid for tickets to see it, and that she said they were underwhelming because there was so much anticipation to go see these statues, and then it's like, it's just like, okay, it's kind of like one of those things like the Grand Canyon or something, like when you get there, you're like, look at it for a couple minutes, and then you're just like, cool.
All right.
I'm gonna get back in my car. And at least that's how it was for me. I don't know.
I still haven't seen it.
Oh, well, here you go.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the show.
Yeah.
So yeah, they do go to dinner with the Greek Prime Minister, and he basically tells them, you know, he's questioning the president's credibility here,
right?
And that really upsets Conrad, and he gets up and leaves. And you can see Elizabeth. Well, first of all, she didn't say anything during that whole dinner.
Yeah, I was kind of like, say something, like take up for the guy, because this guy, the prime minister, is straight up pretty much bashing the president and saying, you know, I didn't even, or we learned this tonight, that apparently, you know, members of his party are asking him not to run.
Exactly.
And the prime minister points this out.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, dang.
Yeah, and Elizabeth has known that there's been, you know, some backlash, obviously, and I think there should be, and it would be surprising if there wasn't any, especially after this whole failed coup situation. But you know, to hear another world leader say that to one world leader who's, you know, one of the most respected is, first of all, very disrespectful, but also, you know, it's like real serious that he might be asked to not run for president again.
And he says, the prime minister says to him, you know, if you wanted, or if you believe in your people or cared about your people this much, then you would step down right now. You wouldn't wait until someone asks you to not run. And that's when he got really angry. But that, I mean, I was kind of surprised that Beth sat there and said nothing. I mean, I guess, what do you say in that situation? But
that's also a conversation between two world leaders. She, you know, is definitely a member of his team. She's not, you know, I don't really know if it would be her place to defend him in that moment, because he can defend himself. But she did mention in a private conversation with the president later that she wants him to fight. And that's when she says, you know, I'm only here because of you, like, because he told her that her job, she would still have her job because she's very much needed or whatever. But she's like, I'm here because of you, and I just want you to fight. Like, she's just like, why are you just gonna step down? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So you can see that she like wants to see more of him. And I want to see more of him too, because this whole show, obviously, it's called Madam Secretary, so we're following her. But I do want to see him be more, have a little more muscle.
Yeah, I really liked, you know, that we got to see that tonight at the end of the episode, because it's a side we haven't really been able to see of him, except when he's kind of being mean to Bess a little bit. And so I liked kind of seeing them tag team. And really, you know, figure stuff out together and be the president of the United States.
Actually act like the president. That's what I was thinking. So let's pause here for a second on that storyline and go back just to catch us up on what else is happening, because it all kind of ties in together at the end there. So let's talk about Stevie for a second. So last week we learned that Stevie is dating her boss, who is, you know, significantly older than she is.
And has a child.
And has
been married.
Has been married and divorced, and he met the fam already, and they know it's a thing. So we didn't really see, you know, any of the family opinions this episode, but they are still very much together. They are having a little PDA situation at work with trying to hide it, which I feel like is just going to be found out. And they go to dinner and dates and stuff together. It's like definitely going to be found out. But she says that she has this swooper guy friend. So I guess there's this friend of hers that she grew up with that comes in and out of her life, isn't, you know, the most consistent friend as far as, you know, catching up or calling or texting or whatever. Just kind of comes in when it literally just swoops in. There's not a better way to describe him than a swooper guy friend. I was like, I'm gonna use that term because I feel like I probably have a couple of relationships like that. So, but anyway, so she tells Arthur that she's gonna, you know, she's like, I guess we'll go to lunch. She, you know, is just swooping in again. And he tells her to, and you can see he's a little jealous when he's like, oh, it's a guy, like, blah, blah. He's definitely already pretty territorial.
Like, let's not get jealous just yet.
Yeah, come on, Arthur.
Like,
and he's older. I feel like he should be more mature than that.
Exactly.
Anyway, so we find out, Stevie goes to hang out with this swooper friend, that it's the president's son, Harrison. or Harry, as you know,
My,
because,
oh
like
my.
Prince Harry, I guess, is where they're going with it.
And he's a looker.
Yeah, and he's attractive, but there's obviously, you know, he comes from a very high profile family, of course. He's the first son. And so they're in the bowling alley in the house, and she finds out that he was very matter of fact about it, that he's been in rehab, and
For
that's
heroin.
why for heroin and other drugs.
Oxy,
it was
said.
for Oxy, but
yeah.
we find out later that he still has problems with drugs.
Right.
So he was very honest about it. At first, you could tell that she like kind of thought he was joking. She was like, "Oh," and she was like, "Oh, okay. Like, I'm sorry. Like, how are you?" And in that bowling alley conversation, it seemed like he was making steps to try to recover. He said he was going to his meetings, blah, blah, blah. But you can see that Stevie's like definitely affected by learning that news.
Right.
Well, she had no idea.
It kind of, I mean, I don't want to say gives him an excuse as to why he's like a swooper friend, but it makes sense now. I mean, I feel like it makes more sense to her anyway, in her mind. Like, oh, well, he's had all of these issues, so maybe that's why he's been so kind of loose with his contact over the years or whatever. But I mean, it's kind of crazy to me that the press hasn't gotten a hold of this whatsoever yet.
Yeah, so no one knows.
Yeah.
And you can tell that they're really close, or at least they used to be, because he calls her his honorary sister, calls her Gingy. They have nicknames, they have inside jokes. And there seems to be, like, when he said honorary sister, I was like, like there was definitely more of like a flirtatious. I was like, don't flirt with somebody just called her sister.
No.
Makes me uncomfortable. But yeah, so we learned that, and you can tell that she really does care about him. Yeah. And is concerned about, whether or not he's stable enough. And we see later when she's at dinner with Arthur, there's the news is on, and it says an ambulance had to go to the White House for a member of the staff. It was non-life-threatening, blah, blah, blah. But you can see there that she's really concerned. And then you know that Arthur knows that it's, first of all, Harrison, the president's son, and that it's a drug problem, because that explains his behavior with swooping in and not being there. So he kind of just put it together himself. But like you were saying, the press and the public does not know that he has this problem. Right. But Arthur knows now.
It makes me really nervous.
It makes me really nervous. I feel like, and he was already showing some signs of jealousy. Like, I would hope that he wouldn't leak something that serious, but I don't know. I would like my mind immediately went there when he was like, "Oh, don't worry. Like, no one will. It'll get out." Well, he was like, "It'll get out eventually."
And when someone says that, like, obviously, it probably, even President Dalton says himself, like, the press is going to get a hold of this any day now. Yeah. But whenever Arthur said it, I was like, "Oh, this is something he's not gonna forget."
I don't know if I can trust you, Arthur.
Yeah.
So
microloan guy.
Yeah, seriously. But I really hope that's not the case. I mean,
ditto.
It would definitely come out anyways. But you would. If Stevie found out that Arthur were to leak something, then that would obviously be the end of their relationship, I would assume. Well, I would hope. Yeah. But yeah, so
makes me think of a prediction.
All right, well, don't forget it, because I don't really have many. So so then let's switch gears really quickly and talk about Henry. So we see him in the classroom giving the greatest lecture ever.
Of course,
that's whatever Henry does is really
Teacher
great.
Henry.
Yeah. And there's a general in the back sitting in or on the class.
Oh no, that's what she's offering him. Never mind.
So he's from the National War College, he says. At the end of the class, he introduces himself to Henry, says that he's been following Henry's career since he was at UVA, and just, seems like he had very high interest in Henry.
I really love seeing Henry get attention like that. Like someone saying, "I've been following your career for years," and they're offering him this huge position because Henry, he deserves all the recognition he can get.
Exactly. He definitely needs that credit. And so this guy is offering him a position to teach military ethics. It's a strategic studies position. Basically, he would be teaching the future military and diplomatic leaders.
Right. Which is huge, of course.
But it's for the Defense Department, and Henry has spoken out in the past about, not being the biggest fan of the Defense Department. Right. He doesn't know if he wants to take the job because he does love teaching at his current job.
They're worried it'll be a conflict of interest too, because she's, I mean, Bess is clearly the head of the State Department, and the Defense Department and the State Department don't always see eye to eye because she tries to handle things, you know, civilly, and the Defense Department is war. But it's also, I mean, it gives him it puts him in the position to be molding the minds of future leaders, and instead of, you know, teaching ethics to liberal arts students. Like, I love that the person from the college put it that way. Yeah,
and it seems like a great opportunity for Henry, though, because, A, if he doesn't, you know, always agree with the Defense Department, then this is a good opportunity for him to get, you know, his opinion in there and for it to count. And then, but you can see that Elizabeth, you know, really wants him to consider the position, that they need to have a full-on family discussion about it. But she has to leave for Brussels, so they kind of just end it there and let him think on it. But it isn't until later when Russell comes over to the house while Elizabeth's in Brussels, and we find out that so Russell comes to talk to Henry, and we found out that the job came from Russell. It was under his, you know, instruction to offer Henry this job, and this teaching position, quote unquote, is a cover for also an intelligence position, which, you know, is perfect for Henry because he does have a background in the NSA, and he's really smart, and he can still teach, it sounds like, but also, you know, have these other jobs that might come up.
And that's the kind of stuff that Henry really loves. You know, he always talks about his time in the NSA and the stuff that he's, well, he can't talk about the stuff he's done, obviously, but kind of, you know, just how much he enjoyed doing it. And you can tell he really loves being a part of, like, something bigger and something greater. So the whole time I'm like, there's no way he's turning that down. Yeah.
You could see, like, when Russell was there that I felt like Henry felt flattered. He was like smiling. He was like, that does sound pretty awesome.
A little old me.
Yeah, exactly. And last episode we saw Henry did some work. He went down, you know, to help with negotiate with, you know, the bomber, from last week's episode.
The religious guy.
So he's like already getting involved step by step.
Right.
And so this is kind of more the plunge to like officially be working.
Well, and he pointed it out himself. He, you know, it's a religious scholar teaching, you know, military defense people, and it kind of gives him the opportunity to, yes, he's molding the minds of future leaders, but he's also able to put his religious beliefs and ideals out there as well, which is really important to him.
Right. So I'm curious to see how much of this job is actually teaching and how much of it is, you know, if that's just a cover or if he'll actually be teaching.
I hope very little teaching, lots of intelligence work.
Lots of, you know, action for Henry. We want to see. So let's go back to Brussels now. So we saw Elizabeth ask Blake to do her a favor. We don't know what it is. And then we find out later that she was kind of having him do a little undercover research for her. But we see Blake, he's obviously out, like we were talking about, fraternizing. I've never said that word in real life before. I think
that, you said it right.
So anyways, he's drinking, he's out with some of the Germans staff, and but he gets arrested for, I guess, public indecency.
I think that's what it's called.
I guess that would be the charge, but for basically urinating in public because he can't get into the bathroom because you have to put coins in there.
He doesn't have the right size.
He was like, my coins are too big. He was obviously intoxicated, but then ends up just relieving himself next to it in a tree. And it was funny because at the beginning of the episode, when it came to the farm, Henry made a joke that he could just go to the bathroom behind the barn. And so then now he's actually doing that, but in Brussels, in a foreign country, and then all of a sudden the lights are going off. And of course, Nadine is meeting him there.
When she says, she's busting him out of jail, I guess, kind of, and she says, "You're an embarrassment to the State Department." I'm like,
whoa,
that's a little intense, Nadine.
Yeah, but little does Nadine know, and the rest of the staff for that matter, that Blake was actually getting some information because Elizabeth had him doing some research, and we find out that Germany is having a secret meeting to cut out USA. They don't want any American involvement anymore, and they were also questioning Conrad's credibility this whole time as well. We kind of skipped over this before. When they first got to Brussels, they met with the Chancellor of Germany.
Chancellor.
Yeah. And she basically again said, you know, we just want America to stay out of this.
Let us handle this ourselves.
Let us handle this ourselves. Like, you're not even in Europe. But they find out about this meeting because Blake had made some friends, I guess, with the German staff. And I don't know if they accidentally told him or he was just, you know.
I don't think it was an accident because he was saying.
He got the alert on his phone.
Right. That the meeting was happening right then.
Yeah, found out about the meeting. And Elizabeth and the president just crash it and walk right in. And you can see that, you know, Madam Secretary did give Conrad that pep talk before, like she's like, you can do this, like I want to see you fight, blah blah blah. And then when she gets him for the meeting, she, you know, says we're gonna crash this basically. And this was after Stevie called Elizabeth and asked, you know, does Conrad seem okay, or Mr. Dalton rather, does Mr. Dalton seem okay, because, you know, I'm really worried about Harrison, blah blah blah. And it turns out that's when it clicks for Elizabeth that that's why Conrad has been acting so strange, is because his son is going through this really huge thing. And, you know, if this is to get out, like, what does that mean for re-election, all of this stuff? It's a very heavy issue.
Right. Well, and like I left when she made the point, she's like, we've been through bigger stuff than this, because he was seemingly kind of like giving up. I know a lot of people were being really tough on him, but she's like, we've been through 9/11, like, and look at all the places that we've been, and you're giving up on this. But it's because he's dealing with a bigger issue. I mean, obviously he's the president, the country is very important, but that's his son, and his son, you know, we find out that he relapsed and on heroin. So it's a lot of stuff going on for him. So of course he's going to be, you know,
a little
kind of like kicking him while he's down almost.
Yeah, exactly. But she reminds him of what a great leader he is, and how, you know, even after he didn't let something as serious and tragic as 9/11 get him down, so why would he stop fighting now? Was essentially her point. And so they bust in this German meeting, and the Chancellor's like, you're not invited here,
you're not welcome.
Yeah, you're not welcome.
That wasn't a German accent,
like, and he was like, we are now. And so
here we are.
Yeah. And so they want to, and so the meeting, they're like talking about, they don't want to do any more deals. They want to hold Greece responsible, and they're even thinking
about kicking them out of the Eurozone for all that they've done,
which is huge.
Yeah.
So so Conrad goes off into this speech. In my notes I just have, yay Conrad. And you can see the look on Elizabeth's face. She's just so proud of him. She's like, that's the president I knew. And you could see, you know, he basically is just like, we need to have a united front on this. There's been times when each country in this room has had a problem, and we've all helped out, or America has helped out, and you can't shut us out now.
And if you do, and if you shut us out and shut Greece out like that, then it's just going to end in disaster for everyone. So why do that? And it's better to
figure something out together than it would be to isolate anybody, you know, especially Greece in this, because they need to figure out a situation. Their debt's just not going to go away. So, you know, gives a little pep talk, and then, you know, it seems like everything ends well. And Elizabeth figured out a situation with the statues. So she worked out a deal with Max to allow the statues to go back on display in the Smithsonian, and he will receive any of the profits from entrance fees or whatever it is for as long as they're on display, which could take, you know, a century and a half.
But at least it's working toward the goal.
Yeah, at least, you know, eventually he will hopefully be paid back. And he's just not, you know, holding these statues hostage anymore, but these actually, you know, is gonna make some money off of them. So that's how they got the statues back in, you know, basically back on loan from Greece. And I guess Greece doesn't care about not getting the money from it.
I still don't see how they're just like, well, because obviously they know that they have a debt to pay. But I still don't see how they're just okay with being like, because they're fighting so hard to get them back, and then they're like, okay, well, as long as they're on display, you
not
keep
in our country. I'm like,
I
guess that's just a way, a fair way for Max to be repaid, but also for Greece to not have to pay the 1.3 billion or whatever it is. So that's all settled. Elizabeth strikes again. But it's not only just Elizabeth. It's Conrad really steps up at the end there, and especially Jay. I feel like Jay is just like, you know,
he's not out of the park.
Yeah, he always is. But it's really, and even Matt says he brings up the thing about them being like a rock band or whatever, and that's like when it clicks for Elizabeth. So they're back at the farm for a weekend with the family, and basically they decide to sell the farm, and Henry's going to take the job.
Right. And they were worried about telling the kids, but then we see the kids come out and say, like, can we end this weekend? We're kind of bored.
They're over it. They want their technology. They want their cell service.
Exactly.
I don't blame them.
They're like, let's get back to DC.
Yeah, they're like, can we go back now? But you can see the family is really adjusting well. You know, the first half of this season, I guess, was the growing pains of settling into Elizabeth settling into new schools, the new job, being in the public eye, and especially Stevie struggled with that. And I think that with her relationship with Harrison, especially, she can relate because she is obviously a member of a high-profile family as well. Not that she, you know, has a drug problem, but she's definitely, you know, she dropped out of college, she maxed out her credit cards, now she had to move back in. Like, she's definitely had her fair share of struggle with it.
I love when she's comparing that, and he's like, I still win.
I still
win.
Like,
yeah, you kind of do.
Yeah, no question. But you can see that she's gonna try to be in Harrison's life, though. Because he definitely needs a friend who can understand, and especially if no one knows what's happening with him right now. And she's the only person.
He needs someone to talk to.
He needs that support for sure. So yeah, so that about, and I like that Elizabeth and Stevie are having a healthy relationship now. They're asking how they're doing. They're having phone calls,
being friendly.
It's not that awkward tension that was there before. But yeah, so that about wraps it up this week. Is there anything else we missed? I don't think
that's about it.
Yeah, well, let's get into some predictions.
Yes.
I know you mentioned having one.
Well, I feel like
to mind.
I feel like it's a little easy, but I think that Arthur has to do with Stevie and Harrison. I think Arthur is gonna get jealous because she's gonna start spending a lot of time with him.
I feel like Stevie and Harrison are meant to be.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, we just met him tonight, and I'm like, ooh, they have something. Yeah, because just the way she looks at him, I feel like it's gonna be, and like, that's a good storyline to kind of go off of, the president's daughter, or sorry, the president's son and the Secretary of State's daughter getting together. So I feel like something will happen with Arthur. Hopefully he's not gonna go to the press with all the stuff, but I kind of feel like it could go that way.
Yeah. Here's the thing, since they're in a relationship and Madam Secretary knows they are, I feel like Arthur would need some sort of like security clearance, right? I feel like Stevie doesn't have the most like, I think she just tells him everything, which I can't. And
granted, she didn't tell him that, obviously.
Yeah,
but
he just put it together.
To use some deductive reasoning.
But she would need to be more careful. She can't, because she said his name, and there's only, you know, like, considering who she is, it would make sense for her to know him.
Yeah, I can definitely see them going that way.
Yeah.
And then I'm predicting that once Henry, you know, gets really started with this new job, it's going to be a lot of intelligence work.
Yeah.
And
I'm happy about that because we wanted, you know, Henry to get back into, you know, working undercover and working in intelligence. And he is now. And so that's really great. And we're approaching the end of the season here in just a few episodes. So I'm really curious to see. Yeah, 3 more. So I'm curious to see how they're going to wrap it all up. And, you know, I guess they'll start Henry on his job, and then we'll pick up next season with him in a different role. But
we shall see.
We shall see. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you all have a wonderful Easter.
Yes.
April, where can we find you on social media?
Y'all can find me on Twitter and Instagram at April Whisenhant.
And you can find me at Sterling Cates, and of course, all of us here at AfterBuzz TV. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.